Great to be back here at the Agile Business Conference and see it every year grow and grow as more and more organisations, I think, realise the need to become more responsive, to be able to sense the change that's going on in the marketplace, the opportunities of new technology, and the ever-increasing demands of their customers. So that's the topic that we're going to address in this keynote. What does it mean to be a responsive organisation, and why is it important to do so? Some very brief introductions, just so you can match the names with the faces. So myself and Manav are here representing TCS, and very pleased to have Russell Evans here to bring some of the experiences from the legal and general organisation about how they have become more responsive to be able to address changes in their marketplaces, increasing expectations of their customers, and the opportunities that new technology brings to them. The need to become more responsive really reflects the ever-increasing pace of change we're seeing in the marketplace at the moment. And these are the sorts of questions that companies have been asking themselves over the years. So what is the future going to hold? What is going to be new? What's the next big thing coming along in the next 5, 10 or 15 years? And how is that going to impact on our company? What new products are we going to need to develop? What new services are we going to need to provide? What new markets do we need to open up? And then what do we do about that? How do we actually put in place plans and programs to move our company to where it needs to be to match the needs of that future? And in the past, organisations literally would say, okay, our vision for 10 years' time is to be here. We'll set out our roadmap, and then we'll put our heads down, and we'll just focus on delivery for the next 5 or 10 years, and then we'll look up and see where we need to go next. And all of that relies on an ability to predict the future. So how good are we at predicting the future? We're going to look at some of the changes that have taken place over the last 10 years, look at some of the changes that might come along in the next 10 years, to see how we are at predicting the direction things are going to move in. But if we step further back, here's an example of a prediction that was made in 1925 by a leading architect and town planner who foresaw the need to address congestion in city centres through things like having multiple levels of transportation. So the diagram there shows pedestrians on one level, slow-moving traffic, fast-moving traffic, and rail transportation, and also the need for ever larger buildings. And he projected that by 1950, we would have skyscrapers that would be half a mile high. And at the time, the tallest building in the world was the Woolworth building in New York, that was just under 1/6 of a mile high. Now, he didn't quite get the timescales right on that projection. By 1950, the tallest building in the world was the Empire State Building, which didn't quite match the 1/4 of a mile height. And in fact, it wasn't until 2010 that we had the first half-mile high building, being the Burj Khalifa. Projection by a very well-respected statistician in 1935 that within 20 years, more than half of the population of the US would live in mobile homes, caravans. The 2011 American Housing Survey showed that actually 6.4% of dwellings in the US were mobile homes. But the utopian vision of having the freedom and flexibility to move your home wherever you like really didn't come on. This was from Popular Mechanics magazine in 1955, looking at, what's the impact going to be of our new synthetic materials, and projecting that the housewife of the future there would be able to hose down the furniture, the carpets, the curtains, and so on, turn the air conditioning on full for a couple of minutes to dry everything off, and not quite where we've ended up so many years later. Some of the projections, again, are right, but maybe the timescales are wrong. This was the Waltham watch company projecting in 1968 that by the year 2000, we would have watches that would be used for much more than time, for communication hubs, and having miniaturized computers in there. And that's where we are now. And it's really only last year that we saw that the real first smartwatches with things like the Pebble and the Galaxy Gear and so on coming in, and the announcements now that next year we'll have the Apple Watch. So So it must be mainstream. Interesting, ironically enough, the Waltham Watch Company now only exists as a high-end Swiss manufacturer of completely mechanical watches. So, but if we come a bit more recent, never mind. If we went back in time 10 years and try and cast your mind back to what life was like just 10 years ago, the logos up here show you things that we didn't have 10 years ago. Facebook literally had just been launched earlier in 2004. And, you know, there was all the noise around how it was pointless, waste of people's time, would never have any relevance in the business world. We've seen movement in the social media side from just being, you know, sharing information with your friends as a vital tool of engagement now between customers and their companies and their customers. And we've seen the launch of other platforms like Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram and so on that are shown on here, and the more instant messaging side with Facebook Messenger and so on. 10 years ago, we were still 2 years away from the iPhone. We were 6 years away from the iPad, which seems remarkable standing here now that it is only 4 years ago that the iPad was launched. And at the time, people were saying this is not a form factor that's going to have any success. You're much better off with things like netbooks. Where are the netbooks gone? And how many of us here in the room has got some form of tablet here? Very many of us. We've seen a revolution in the online media distribution. So the likes of Blockbuster having gone by the wayside, the emergence of iTunes, Google Play, TV and movies. And we're seeing also transformation in the financial services sector, just as some other examples there. We're seeing new competitors coming into the marketplace like Metro Bank, the first new branch network in the UK for very many years. New entrants who can come in without what we call the complexity drag of the old players who making any changes to their systems to become more relevant in the mobile and digital space becomes very, very difficult. New entrants can come in without all that baggage to deal with. And we're seeing other changes in the online and digital space. We're seeing products like Google Wallet emerge, Ping It from Barclays, letting you make mobile payments. It's been reported that Facebook have applied for a banking license in Ireland. So we've got Hello Bank there, which is the first completely mobile and digital bank in Europe. So we're seeing major change over the last 10 years that, you know, if we were standing here in 2004, we would not really have been able to project the difference it would make to our lives over that 10-year period. So some examples of what might come along in the next 10 years. Just some perhaps take you outside of our normal business lives, if you like. In military technology, we'll see very soon, within the next year or so, robots coming into use to support the US Army. So there's the Big Dog is the robot that's shown there that will initially provide a support role to land forces, carrying their bags for them essentially as they make their way through. We will see, again, within the course of the next year, the first laser weapons being installed on US Navy ships, which are capable of clearly firing at the speed of light and able to protect from incoming missiles, small planes, and so on. And at a cost per shot of $1 compared to hundreds of thousands of dollars to fire a missile to do the same job. We'll see further developments over on the right-hand side. There is the Polish PL-01 stealth tank. We've seen advances in active camouflage technology, invisibility cloaks, if you like, in the visible spectrum. This tank takes that also into the heat section, so it's covered with plates that can be heated or cooled to either make it completely blend in to the background or to make it appear to be a completely different sort of vehicle like a normal car. In the biotechnology space, over the course of the next decade, many of our body parts will become replaceable. So artificial self-regulating hearts are pretty much now's technology. We will have clinical trials of artificial kidneys taking place within the next 3 years. We've seen developments recently with artificial eyes connected into the retina and through into the brain. And as we go through the next 10 years, these artificial body parts, in many cases, will become better than the ones that we grow ourselves. So as we've seen a rise of cosmetic surgery over the last few years, will we see a rise in functional surgery to replace your human arm with a robotic arm, or your human eyes with a higher resolution version? I think the answer is yes, but it's quite a frightening prospect. So those are some of the areas. There's some other aspects on there that I won't go into. So this was a quote from Neil Armstrong. So sometimes with our prophecies, or our predictions, we get them in the right direction, but not in the right timescale. But as Neil Armstrong says, we're often very over-ambitious with what we see happening in the next year, but we can't really see forward enough, and we can't really predict the degree of change we'll get in the longer terms. So how do we deal with that? We need to build organisations that are constantly sensing the changes around them, using all their senses, reaching out all of the external groups that they come into focus to understand what is the disruption that's going on in the marketplace, and then to be able to respond to those changes with agility. So we need to be both outward looking to understand what the environment's doing, and then inward looking to see how do we change the way our organisations work to deal with that. Now, I mentioned the use of the robotics in the US Army, and I'm going to show you a brief video now of Big Dog, showing how it uses its sensing capabilities in terms of gyroscopes, in terms of visual sensing, position sensors on its limbs, pressure sensors on its feet, and so on, to be able to sense what's going on in the environment around it and to respond to that with agility without any human interaction. See how it's sensing the disruption from the external side and is able to respond to that and steady itself back onto course. Or in a slightly more extreme example here, encountering ice. It's remarkable to me how naturally it's able to respond to losing its footing. And really our organisations need to become that agile, to have that ability to sense what's going on in the external environment and to react to that and to course correct and be able to move forward. And that's really what we're talking about in terms of becoming a responsive enterprise. So an enterprise which is able to look externally at changes in the customer world, the technology that's available, and other changes in the marketplace to be able to then adjust how it operates internally to be able to respond and to survive and thrive in that kind of environment. So in terms of the sensing aspect, on the customer side, we know that customers are expecting more and more a consistent experience of working with our organisations. They don't expect that if they're going to get one service from our organisation that it looks completely different to another service. We heard about that in the first keynote this morning on the governance services. They expect consistent experience. They expect sharing of data so that you don't have to provide all the same personal information again when you're talking to someone on the insurance side rather than on the banking side. And more we'll see that across the platforms as well. You know, we know there are many places where you can say just sign in with Facebook, and we know that there's a certain basic information that's available then. Well, we see that also happening across other industries so that we have our basic set of information that we don't have to repeat every time we want to open up a new relationship with a new service provider. We know that our customers expect more and more engagement. They don't expect there to be a big wall between our organisations and their experience. And we know that they're expecting empowerment, both in terms of being able to do things themselves and also to be involved in the innovation process as well. So building up an innovation ecosystem with our customers, our service providers, and also the wider supplier environment as well. A lot of the examples I gave were around changes in technology, and listed here are what we call the digital 5 forces, the key areas that we see right now as being driving some of this change that we're seeing. So mobile and pervasive computing, the big data collection and analytics, the use of social media not just as a person-to-person, but person-to-customer and customer-to-customer interactions. The use of cloud services and systems, and the increasing use that we'll see of artificial intelligence and robotics as we move forward. And on the market side, we're seeing competition coming in from a wide range of different providers. And these days, it seems it's less important to, in the old adage, to say focus on your core competency, outsource everything else. Really, the understanding here is the person who builds the best relationship with their customer and is able to move sideways across and broaden their services they can provide to make their customers' lives easier, can enter into new markets, can disrupt those markets, and may lead to major change. We've seen major challenges in the regulation and legislation space. It's going to be very difficult for our legislators to keep up with the technology advances. Once we've got biotechnology sensors in our bodies monitoring things like our heart rates, our blood pressure, the presence of certain chemicals in our blood, and we're publishing that through the cloud, how do we regulate how that information can be used, for example? And we're also seeing changes in the way that the market's segmented. We're moving away from this idea that we address the average customer to looking at how we treat individuals and how we respond to those individuals' needs. So all of those are key things that organizations need to be watching out for, need to be understanding how their customer needs and expectations are changing, how new technology is going to impact on their business, and how the changes in the overall marketplace will need to be addressed in a quick way to be able to keep relevant. And that internal response is what Manav is now going to talk about. How do we change the organizations from inside to address those external factors?
Right, thanks, Richard. Okay, as always, you've painted the problem statement, asked me to come in for the solution. Great. So Richard's painting one part of it around the sensing. So it's very important for us to make sure that we are sensing the challenge. And of course, we need to have some sort of response ready. So any ideas, what could that response look like? Come on, the clue's in the room here. I can hear some murmuring around Agile or something. Well, of course, we've come into Agile Business Conference, so there needs to be a level of agility. How many of us think that Agile can actually provide a good response? Not many. Okay, well, a few hands here. I think we are here in Agile Business Conference. Clearly, some of you are looking for answers. So that is part of the answer. But what if I was to say that's not the only answer? And interestingly, the brochure says Agile, the next frontier. I was in a conference a couple of weeks ago, and it was a smaller gathering. I said, if there are any questions, just speak out. And I went through the normal things. Agile is over a decade old. The term was coined 2002. And also, I was doing some of these things 10 years ago when we were launching this movement in Yahoo. Yeah, it's in large, complex organizations today, but the principles and the ethos were same. I could see a lady sort of literally on the edge of the seat, and as soon as I finished, she said, I've got a question. I haven't used Agile. I'm not doing Agile. I'll just want to move on to the next thing. Why should I do something which is 10-year-old? So what is the next thing? And I know in the communities we have been trying to find answers, and you can see a lot of blog posts out there. But clearly, Agile in its entirety, or the term as it exists today, might not be the answer. So let's look at that rather than building up. I think this code, I tried to find the origins of it, but I've certainly tainted that. Some of it was in the Agile community somewhere. I used the search engine Yahoo and Bing, and the third one, which I'm sure you are aware of. So the idea is the problem, well, I'm a bit biased. I've worked for the previous two companies and not the third one, so hey-ho. The problem we face today has nothing to do with people. Sorry, it's nothing to do with process or technology, but it is about people. And Agile provides a framework within which we need to inspect and adapt. Interestingly, the last part, this is very frustrating for people who are looking for final procedures and answers. There's still a lot of people out there, even after a decade of agility or Agile, they're still looking for that silver bullet. And we see constantly new frameworks evolving around Agile. We see lots of tools coming around. There is no silver bullet. Sorry if you came to the conference for this. But what's important is the behavior trait. So Agile, as it stands today, might not be the next thing, but it is agility as a behavior. I was looking up as a noun. Agility is all about making sure that you're nimble and you're quick. So interestingly, how do we then bake the agility in? And from my point of view, it is the culture dimension. Now, there have been some discussion around this topic already. But this is a model which I quite like. It's by someone called William Schneider, and it's called the Schneider model. And this visual was actually done by someone called Michael Sahota, who's done quite a bit of work in this. The culture dimension, as per William Schneider, is at least on 4 of these areas. Interestingly, control, collaboration, cultivation, and competence. Let me just try and make the slide a little bit more complex. Now, you might think that with Agile has actually nothing to do with the culture. If you do a bit of research and you try and find out, there are some frameworks which do operate in a bit of a control way. Now, important thing is not to be bogged down and be too much on the control side, which we find, by the way, when we go into large, complex organization. They start off as very control-centric. Everything is procedural, everything is written down. Go to page number 1421 of the manual, and you will find the answer. That might not be the right one, though. Okay, interesting. Has anyone heard about Kanban? Quite a few of you. You'll be surprised in case you didn't know that is more on the control side. Because it's got procedures in there, it's got processes, it limits work in progress, it visualizes the workflow. So if you thought Agile had nothing to do with the control side of it, there you go. Collaboration, cultivation undoubtedly are the sweet spots of Agile. If you are not doing these two, you would probably do Agile, you would not be Agile, and certainly to get to the path of agility, when we look at organizations and we look at transformation, they need to be higher on those scores. Competence is another interesting one, and that was touched upon, that Agile doesn't mean that it will make everything successful, it's a magic bullet. But if they are lacking in competence, or in organizations don't have that responsiveness from within, it will highlight that. And we see increasingly organizations then choose to do something different, or they want to maybe hire some external resources, and sometimes they come over an age where they want to let go of that external competence, and they want to bake the competence within. Michael this morning in his first keynote spoke about competence, that how in the digital organization or in the GDS, they are really baking the competence in. You can't outsource all of it. So interestingly, then how do we ensure that the responsive enterprise, the sort of bit in the middle, makes that agility factor worthwhile, and how does it actually then ensure that culture is at the heart of it? It's the way stuff gets done here. And these are the 3 key organizational attributes, if you like, of people and organization: operational excellence, systems and infrastructure. As an organization who wants to mature into a responsive enterprise, who wants to bake that agility culture in, you'll have to address all these 3. Now, let me give you a view of how we go about doing that, or at least one of the ways which we approach this, is using a structure to it. Now, all methods are flawed. Some of them are helpful. So you choose to use some of them. So if you look at those 3 organizational verticals which you need to improve, and you need to create that responsiveness, we suggest you look at least these 5 themes, you can say, or these 5 perspectives of an organization. Now, I'm not going into each and every detail here with the constraint of time, but you're more than welcome to come and talk to us on our stand. But you need to make sure the organization is engaging, both for outside customers as well as engaging for the employees within. Increasingly, we are saying that if you do not have a motivated employee base, you've got a problem. Agile as a method, as a framework, certainly you need to look at structures and roles. There are various methods around: DSDM, SAFe, DAD, Scrum even for that matter. Insight driven, in God we trust, everyone else must bring data. Deming. Are we using the analytics? Are we using the information which is thrown at us? Are we doing something about it? Innovative, again, employee innovation ecosystem, it's not just limited to Googles of this world who have to set aside 20% of their workforce time to do innovation. All of us need to think how to do this better, how to innovate, how to take that one step forward. I can't emphasize collaboration enough, but interesting perspective on this is not just about employee. It is also about the systems. Do the systems talk to each other? Do they work in harmony? Are they all sort of just trying to just do the same thing but differently? So all of these things are the various perspectives which I would suggest to look at to create the responsive enterprise. And I'll now invite Russ to talk through some of the experiences we had together in Legal and General, taking us a step further on this responsive enterprise.
Thank you, Manav. Good morning, everybody. So yes, as Richard and Manav said, I come from the retirements division at Legal and General. And as part of being outwardly responsive, I'm going to talk to you today about a disruptor that challenged our business over the last couple of years. Who in the room knows what an enhanced annuity is? Oh, well, we've got a couple of hands. I'm quite surprised. So a lot of people won't know what this is. Basically, throughout your working lives, most, if not all of you, will be saving money into a pension ready for your retirement. It's not actually the pension that provides you with the income when you reach retirement. It's an annuity product. And what an enhanced annuity is we take details, I say details, about 300 data items about an individual's medical and lifestyle information, and crudely put, we work out how long we think we need to make your money last. How long are you going to need a retirement income? We can then potentially give you a higher income than a standard life if you have certain medical conditions or lifestyle factors. So the disruptor I'm going to be talking about is a change in technology, the emergence of portals and websites such as confused.com and the Meerkat that allow customers to enter their details online and expect an immediate response. Before such a website existed, the process of getting an enhanced annuity quote was very much manual. Customers or financial advisors would fill in questionnaires, fill out pieces of paper, submit those to Legal and General. We'd have learned people in our head office pore over that data, make certain assumptions and decisions based on that data, and within about 48 hours, we'd provide back a quote. With the emergence of the portals and the websites, I've given a couple of examples here. So we're talking sort of Hargreaves Lansdown, Iris, AsureWeb. That same process, that same end outcome for the customer in that they want an enhanced annuity quote, instead of it happening over a 48-hour period, needed to happen over a 10-second period. So therefore, we created a large project, as you can well imagine, at Legal and General to create the system architecture required in order to do all of that assessment of medical conditions, pricing, validation, and supply of a quote back within the 10 seconds. When you work at a 250-year-old insurance company, new ways of working take a little while to embed themselves into the organisation. So when we started the project, it was a large waterfall project. We were going to define all of the detailed requirements. We'll submit those over to our managed service provider to provide us with a design. But the world of work and technology and regulation, as Richard was mentioning earlier, it changes constantly. So over that period of trying to define our detailed requirements, more and more changes were needing to be worked into those requirements. And very quickly, we were at a stage of analysis paralysis, whereby as soon as we thought we were getting to an end, something changed in the regulation, something changed in the way that our customer wanted to communicate with us, and we'd need to work that into the requirements. So Legal and General needed to change its inward responsiveness, and that's when we appealed to Manav and the team at TCS to help us become more agile. So under Manav's guidance, we chose to focus on a few key areas in order to achieve our goals. The first thing we did was to take that massive scope of what we were trying to achieve and chunk it up into smaller deliverables, things that we could achieve over a couple of months, six at the very most, and focusing on collaboration and our people highly. We created at first a co-located team in one of our offices down on the south coast. So therefore we had our business SMEs, we had our business analysts, developers. The developers were flown in from Bangalore, testers came in from all over the place, so that we could create a shared vision and really create a buzz around the project for the people that were going to be working on it. So as I say, we focused on the process. We adopted a Scrum. We adopted a Scrum methodology. So we had the daily catch-ups. We had the regular retrospectives where we were able to look at what we were doing, define better ways of doing it, get better for the next month. We had regular playbacks with our business leadership team so that they could feel confident that what we were producing was moving them towards the short-term goal that they wanted to achieve, and that ultimately their bigger picture could be achieved. And we found some great benefits. The first of which is market share. So it took us 6 months to complete the first phase of the project, and that was to get those 10-second quotes back to the portals. After the first quarter of being live, we found that 90% of our quote volume was now being automated through those websites, and we had a record quarter in terms of market share for enhanced annuities. We got a lot higher than we had done in the past. The second benefit that we observed in the business was a process efficiency. As I said, 90% of our quote volume was suddenly being done in 10 seconds. It wasn't taking 48 hours. So as with most companies, we've only got a finite resource. There's only a certain number of people sitting in desks. If the number of requests outweighed the demands that our resources could cope with, we were having to cherry pick which cases that we were quoting on. Once 90% are going through automated, we're quoting on the whole of the market, and we're able to focus our human beings, our underwriters, at the cases where they add the most value and we can be the most competitive. The next point is about project delivery. As I said, when we were trying to do this in a waterfall way, it was going nowhere fast. As soon as we'd started on our Agile journey, the project came in a couple of weeks early. It came in under budget. And throughout that time, because we had such close collaboration and such a wonderful team spirit, our defect rate was less than 4%. So the quality, we went live with no defects. It was early, it was cheap, and the quality was exceptional. And what that's meant is it's really changed the culture, especially within the retirements division, and many of the other divisions at Legal & General are looking at this as an example and saying we need to do our projects like this. That collaboration between the business unit and the change team, that collaboration between Legal & General and our managed service providers continues after that project. That project was kind of was the mould that we could repeatedly look to recreate. So much so that we're actually using Agile outside of the IT environment. So a couple of pictures that I've got for you here. I also work as part of the corporate social responsibility effort at Legal & General, and we're now using Agile to organise our CSR events and CSR days. So on the left here we have the Storrington Guiding Hall in West Sussex, and later this month we'll be repainting the hall and doing various other maintenance tasks for them. And we're using the same collaborative and agility in that planning. We're breaking the task of painting the hall down into small chunks so that we can monitor burn rate. We're going to have hour-and-a-half scrums so that people can see the progress that we're making, stay enthused, stay motivated. And we continue, meanwhile, being responsive to the outside world for changes that might mean that we've got to adapt our business.
Pensioners will have complete freedom to draw down as much or as little of their pension pot as they want, any time they want. No caps, no drawdown limits. Let me be clear, no one will have to buy an annuity.
For an annuity company, that was... the Chancellor's announcement in the budget this year for an annuity company was a sort of fair disruptor to the way that we do work. But fortunately, our inward responsiveness has changed, and we're using a lot of those agile behaviours, a lot of collaboration between ourselves and our business and our managed service providers to ensure that we're adapting and that we're ready for the challenges ahead. Richard.
Thanks. So just to sum up, so you can go to lunch, our ability to predict the future is a bit of hit and miss at best. Sometimes we get the direction right, but not the timescales. Sometimes we don't get the direction right either. Does that mean we shouldn't try? Well, no, because as the great Canadian ice hockey coach said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. We do need to be experimenting more as organisations, trying things out, seeing if they work. If they don't, great, move on to the next thing. We do need to be trying and experimenting, and Agile can all help towards that as well. And even the Assistant Secretary to the Treasury from the 1970s was saying, if you're going to predict, if you're going to forecast often. This is not something that you do on a 5-yearly planning cycle of saying, right, we'll project what's going to happen for the next 5 years, get our heads down, and then we will look up again in 5 years' time and see where we've got to. So to survive and thrive, we need to address those outside in, looking out, seeing, sensing the changes in the marketplace, sensing the changes that our technology is bringing, sensing the changes in our customer expectation, and then responding to that and putting in place the right organisation structure, the people with the right skills, having the right ways of working, if you don't want to call them processes, and also having the right systems and infrastructure in place so that we can adapt very quickly and be truly a responsive enterprise. And as we do all of that, remember, the robots are coming. If you'd like to talk more about some of the issues we've raised in here, then please come along and see us at our stand. Or if you visit tcs.com/perspectives, you'll see some of the other outputs and thought leadership from our consulting practices. But for now, thank you and enjoy your lunch.